Please come home.
I can't, sweetie.
But why?
It's not safe. I'm sorry.
7 years ago, the most powerful man in Seoul walked away from the woman he loved because he believed she betrayed him. Tonight, a 7-year-old girl walked into his boardroom with $1 and told him he was wrong. 42 floors above Seoul, 6 men negotiated a deal worth a country. Chairman Kim Jae-won had not lost a negotiation in 11 years. Then the doors opened. No knock. No announcement. 2 security guards stepped in, tense. And behind them, a little black girl walked into the boardroom. Yellow cardigan. 2 uneven puffs. 1 sock falling down her ankle. Like the building belonged to her. A guard moved to grab her arm. Jae-won lifted 1 finger. Don't. The guard froze. The room went silent. The girl walked straight to the head of the table. Reached into her pocket. Pulled out a crumpled dollar bill and smoothed it once against her leg. Then she slid it across the glass. It stopped inches from his hand. Please come home, she said softly. Mom is dying. A lawyer laughed once, nervous. Jae-won's eyes flicked toward him. The laugh died instantly. He stared at the dollar like it was a bomb. Who told you my name? He asked, low and flat. She did. And who is she? The girl swallowed. Her fingers tightened at her sides. She said you'd pretend you don't know me. Something moved in his expression, fast and gone. The room felt smaller. What is her name? He asked. Kim Soo-ah. The air shifted. 7 years collapsed into a single heartbeat. A chair scraped behind him. Remove her, someone whispered. Jae-won's hand landed on the table, hard. Glass trembled. Touch her, he said quietly, and I end you. No one moved. He stood. Stepped around the table. Looked down at the dollar. Then at her. If this is a lie, he said evenly, someone dies. Her chin lifted. It's not. He buttoned his jacket. Bring the car. The elevator doors closed. For the first time in years, Kim Jae-won stood without witnesses. The city dropped away floor by floor behind the glass wall. He didn't look at it. He pulled out his phone. St. Mary's Hospital, he said when the call connected. Kim Soo-ah. Condition. 3 minutes. He ended the call before they answered. The elevator opened to the private parking level. His car was already running. The girl was inside. She sat in the back seat, hands folded in her lap, staring straight ahead like she had finished the hardest part of her day. He got in beside her. The door shut. The car moved. For a full minute, neither of them spoke. You came alone? He asked finally. She nodded. She didn't want to, the girl said. She couldn't walk. His jaw tightened. His phone buzzed. He read the message once. Critical care. 48 hours. Internal bleeding. Unstable. It was real. He locked the screen. Why now? He asked. The girl looked at him for the first time since leaving the building. Because she said if you didn't come now, you never would. The city lights blurred past the window. He remembered a different night. Rain. An argument. A report placed on his desk with proof that she had betrayed him. Proof he never questioned. His hand slowly curled into a fist. Who told you to use that dollar? He asked. She said you'd understand. He stared ahead. He did. The hospital sign appeared in the distance. Blue light against the dark. He leaned forward slightly. Drive faster. The engine growled. And something long buried began to wake. The ICU corridor smelled like antiseptic and cold air. Monitors beeped in steady rhythms behind closed doors. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Jae-won walked down the hallway without rushing. People moved out of his way anyway. The girl stayed close beside him, her small fingers brushing the fabric of his coat but not holding it. Room 417. He knew the number before the nurse stepped into his path. She left instructions, the nurse said carefully. If you came, you were not to enter. The words landed harder than a slap. Jae-won looked at the door. A thin strip of light beneath it. Shadows shifting inside. Those were her exact instructions, the nurse repeated. The girl's voice came from his side. She said you already chose. The hallway went very quiet. For a moment, something dangerous flickered across his face. Not anger. Something sharper. Regret. He stepped forward. The nurse held her ground. She's weak. If you upset her. I won't, he said. His voice was low. Controlled. But there was steel under it now. He placed his hand on the door handle. Stopped. Through the small glass window, he saw her. Smaller than he remembered. Pale. Tubes against her skin. Machines breathing with her. 7 years. Built on a report he never verified twice. His reflection hovered over hers in the glass. The girl's hand finally grabbed his sleeve. Not pulling. Just holding. Please, she whispered. The monitor inside changed rhythm. Faster. The nurse glanced at the screen through the window. She's asking for him, another voice called from inside. The nurse stepped aside. Jae-won didn't hesitate this time. He opened the door. And walked into the room where the truth had been waiting. The room was dim. One overhead light. Machines glowing softly. The steady hiss of oxygen. Kim Jae-won looked smaller than he remembered. Fragile in a way she had never allowed herself to be. Jae-won stopped at the foot of the bed. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Her eyes found him. No surprise. No anger. Just exhaustion. You came, she whispered. His voice was controlled. You said you were dying. A faint breath that might have been a laugh. I knew that would make you move. The monitor pulsed unevenly. He stepped closer. You should have called, he said. I did, she replied softly. 7 years ago. The words cut deeper than the machines. His jaw tightened. The report was real. No, she said. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Her hand trembled as she reached toward the bedside drawer. He caught it instinctively before it fell. Her skin was cold. They changed it, she whispered. Someone made you angry. Needed you alone. His eyes sharpened. Who? Her breathing faltered. Check the timestamp, she said. The routing code didn't exist yet. He froze. She held his gaze, forcing him to hear her. She's yours, Jae-won. The words landed like impact. She always was. The monitor spiked. Footsteps rushed in. Nurses. Hands moving quickly. Voices overlapping. He stepped back as they worked. Machines screamed once, then flattened. Silence. He stood there, unmoving, as someone gently pulled the sheet higher. 7 years stolen by a lie. And a daughter standing alone in the hallway. When he turned toward the door, something inside him had shifted. Not grief. Worse. Resolve. The funeral was small. No press. No black cars lining the street. No flowers bearing corporate logos. Just wet grass and a gray sky that threatened rain. Maya stood beside the casket in a navy dress slightly too big for her shoulders. A neighbor held an umbrella over her head. She didn't cry loudly. She didn't speak. She just watched as the coffin lowered into the ground. As if memorizing it. 20 meters away, between two bare trees, Jae-won stood alone. Dark coat. Hands in his pockets. No aides. No visible security. No one at the graveside knew he was there. He watched Maya. The way she kept her back straight. The way her fingers curled once at her sides, then forced themselves still. He had seen grown men break under less. The pastor finished. The small group began to disperse quietly. Maya lingered 1 second longer than the others. Then she turned. For a brief moment, her eyes lifted, not toward the grave. Toward the tree line. Toward him. He did not move. He did not step forward. If he did, the world would see her. And the world destroyed what it could see. She searched the edge of the cemetery 1 heartbeat longer. Then the neighbor guided her away. Only when she was gone did Jae-won step forward. He walked to the fresh earth. Placed the crumpled dollar bill on top of the soil. Rain began to fall. "You were wrong," he said quietly to the ground. "I didn't choose." He turned and walked away. Behind him, the dollar grew heavy with rain. Ahead of him, someone would pay for 7 years. And this time, he would not walk away unfinished. He went back to work the next morning. Same time. Same car. Same 42nd floor. No one noticed anything different. That was intentional. But that night, when the building emptied, Jae-won didn't go home. He took the private elevator down. Past the lobby. Past the parking level. To the sub-basement archive. Cold air. Metal shelves. No windows. Records too sensitive to exist on any network. He knew exactly where to look. 3rd row. Middle shelf. Plain manila envelope with a government stamp and a case number burned into his memory. He hadn't touched it in 7 years. He sat beneath the single overhead light and opened it. The accusation. The betrayal. The proof that had justified his departure. He didn't read it the way he had before. This time, he studied the construction. Page 4. Communication log. Timestamp. His fingers stopped. He pulled the page closer. The report was dated 7 years ago. But the routing code embedded in the transmission header belonged to a system update installed 14 months later. Impossible. The node didn't exist at the time the report was filed. Someone had rebuilt the file. Cleanly. Carefully. Deliberately. His jaw tightened once. He didn't curse. Didn't call anyone. He simply turned the page. At the bottom, authorization clearance. High level. Restricted. Only 3 people had access to that channel back then. 2 were dead. He stared at the 3rd clearance ID. Not a name. Just numbers. But he knew them. He closed the file slowly. 7 years of empire built on edited ground. He picked up his phone. "Bring Tae-jun," he said calmly. "And lock this room behind you." The hunt had just begun. Tae-jun returned the next evening with a thin black folder. He closed the archive door behind him. "No digital trace," he said. "Everything printed. Everything contained." Jae-won didn't sit. "Show me." Tae-jun laid out 3 documents across the metal desk. The altered transmission passed through a private relay server. Decommissioned 4 years ago. He slid the first sheet forward. Registered under a shell company. Second sheet. The company dissolved 18 months after the report was filed. Third sheet. Tae-jun's finger rested near the bottom. Registered director, Shin Woo-chan. The name didn't echo. It didn't need to. Jae-won stared at it without blinking. "Verification level?" he asked. 99%, Tae-jun replied. The override was manual. The authorization clearance matches his executive tier at the time. Silence filled the cold room. 7 years ago, Shin had personally delivered the intelligence report. 7 years ago, Shin had said, "Attachment makes you weak." 7 years ago, Jae-won believed him. There's more, Taejun added carefully. He tapped a small annotation near the header. The routing path indicates secondary clearance approval. Above his level. Jae-won's gaze shifted slightly. Meaning? He didn't act alone. The word settled heavier than the name. Shin wasn't the origin. He was part of something larger. How many have seen this? Jae-won asked. Only us. Good. Jae-won gathered the papers and slid them back into the folder. Keep him unaware. Taejun hesitated. Chairman. Do you want him removed? Jae-won's expression hardened, not with rage. With calculation. Dead men close doors, he said evenly. I want this one open. The hunt had changed. This was no longer revenge. It was an excavation. The press conference was already scheduled. Infrastructure expansion. Foreign investment. Predictable headlines. Jae-won stepped to the podium in a dark suit, expression neutral. Cameras flashed. He delivered the prepared statement without hesitation. Calm. Controlled. Then a reporter near the back stood. Chairman Kim, there are reports of a child entering Haesung headquarters last week. Some sources suggest a personal connection. Would you like to clarify? The room shifted. Jae-won didn't blink. There is no daughter, he said evenly. I have no children. Pens moved quickly. Screens lit up. He didn't elaborate. He moved to the next question. The denial spread online within minutes. That evening, his office lights remained on long after sunset. A private screen glowed on his desk. His phone buzzed against the desk, once. Mapo District. School perimeter. 6 green markers. East wall blind spot, he asked. Closed, his aide replied. 2 fixes. 2 rotating. 2 off-site support. Legal? Guardianship transferred to the aunt. Trust fund established. Anonymous. No direct trace. Jae-won studied the map. No visible proximity, he said. No pattern. Yes, Chairman. The aide hesitated. Director Shin attended a school event yesterday. Uninvited. Jae-won's eyes sharpened. Did he approach her? No. A pause. But he watched. Silence stretched. Jae-won leaned back slowly. He's testing exposure, he said. Yes. The city lights reflected across the glass walls behind him. He wants to see what I'll expose. His phone lit up. Unknown number. 3 words. You chose wrong. Jae-won didn't respond. He simply closed the screen showing the school. And opened another file. Seoul Land Trust. The first cut would be silent. And precise. Seoul Land Trust collapsed at market open. No scandal. No headline. Just numbers falling too fast to recover. By noon, 32% of Shin Wuchon's silent infrastructure had evaporated into red. Financial analysts called it timing. A routine correction. Bad positioning. It was none of those things. Jae-won received confirmation in a 4-line encrypted message. He read it once. Deleted it. Across the river, in a quiet office overlooking the Han, Shin studied the same numbers. He read the report twice. Then a 3rd time. His expression did not change. But his hand remained still on the desk longer than usual. He made no immediate calls. Because the absence of fingerprints was the fingerprint. He had taught Jae-won that lesson. Pressure that leaves bruises is amateur. Pressure that leaves confusion is professional. That evening, another quiet shift occurred. 2 political allies who had stood beside Shin for 9 years declined scheduled committee placements. Same hour. Same word used in both messages. Unavailable. Shin understood immediately. This wasn't an attack. It was an isolation. He stood and walked to the window. The city moved normally below. But something in the air felt altered. Jae-won had seen him at the school. Jae-won had denied the child publicly. And now, Jae-won was tightening the circle without announcing it. Shin allowed himself a slow breath. He had built the chairman carefully. Shaped him. Directed him. But this version had nothing left to protect publicly. Which made him more dangerous than before. Shin picked up his personal phone. Dialed from memory. "I think," he said calmly when the call connected. "It's time we had dinner." Across the city, Jae-won's screen lit up with the request. He looked at it for a long moment. Then accepted. The war had just moved into the open. Jae-won did not go home after dinner. He returned to the 42nd floor. The building was quiet. Midnight glass and steel. He placed Shin's name on his desk. Not written. Remembered. Taejun was already waiting. "You were right," Taejun said quietly. "The relay server authorization chain extends upward." "How far?" Taejun slid a thin folder across the desk. Inside, 1 page. At the top, a seal. An internal oversight mark used only for shadow-level clearance. The kind that didn't officially exist. Jae-won had seen it once before. Years ago. On a document so classified it had no title. He looked at the signature beneath it. Not Shin. Higher. Shin hadn't been the architect. He had been a tool. A careful one. Jae-won closed the folder slowly. "If we remove Shin," Taejun said, "we lose access." "Yes. And if we move upward?" Jae-won looked out over Seoul. 42 floors below, traffic still moved. The city did not know it was built on quiet manipulations. "We haven't moved upward yet," he said calmly. "We tighten." Within hours, another quiet collapse began. A logistics corridor owned by one of Shin's remaining allies stalled. Permits delayed. Licenses paused. Bank liquidity restricted. No accusation. No announcement. Just friction. By morning, Shin felt it. Not catastrophic. Not fatal. But deliberate. A signal. Not war. Control. Jae-won stood at the window as dawn bled into the skyline. 7 years stolen. A daughter watching for someone in a crowd. And a framework above them both that believed itself untouchable. He allowed himself one quiet decision. This would not end at Shin. This would end at the source. And this time, he would not choose isolation. He would choose visibility. On his terms. The aunt's apartment was warm. Small kitchen. Crooked magnet on the refrigerator. A drawing taped to the wall. Jae-won stood near the doorway longer than necessary before stepping inside. Maya sat at the table with colored pencils spread around her like territory. She didn't look surprised to see him. "You came," she said simply. He nodded once. The aunt quietly disappeared into the other room. Silence settled between them. Maya drew without speaking. A house. Slanted roof. 2 windows. After a moment, she asked, without looking up. "Why did you tell them I'm not yours?" The pencil kept moving. Her voice didn't shake. It wasn't an accusation. Just arithmetic. He took a seat across from her. "The world I live in," he said carefully, "destroys what it can see." She stopped drawing. Looked at him. "But you can see me right now." He had no immediate answer. The truth was simple. Yes. And that was exactly the problem. She looked back down and added 2 small figures inside the house window. One taller. One smaller. She slid the drawing slightly toward him without lifting it. "You're supposed to stand here," she said, pointing to the taller one. The casual certainty in her tone unsettled him more than the accusation would have. Outside, somewhere across the city, a larger game was tightening. He could feel it. But here, at this small kitchen table, something else was happening. She reached forward and lightly held the edge of his sleeve. Not gripping. Just anchoring. "Are you leaving again?" she asked quietly. He looked at her hand on his coat. Then at the drawing. Then at her. "No," he said. This time, he didn't look away when he said it. The recital was on a Saturday morning. A small courtyard. Folding chairs. Parents holding up phones. Maya stood in the second row on stage, yellow ribbon tied carefully in her hair. She was half a beat behind the music. Trying harder than anyone else. Across the street, a black sedan sat with its engine off. Tinted windows. No driver visible. Inside, Jae-won watched. No security detail standing nearby. No visible connection. Just presence. He didn't record. Didn't smile. He simply observed. Halfway through the performance, another car pulled up behind his. Different make. Different plates. It didn't belong there. He noticed immediately. The passenger door opened slightly. Closed again. Too fast to be casual. His phone vibrated. East Perimeter. Unknown surveillance detected. His jaw tightened. The second vehicle idled. Not close enough to interfere. Close enough to signal. A message. He stepped out of his car. Walked calmly across the street. Parents barely noticed him. On stage, Maya scanned the crowd mid-step. She saw him. For the first time. She didn't have to search. Her shoulders straightened. She hit the next beat perfectly. Across the street, the second car's engine started. Pulled away slowly. Jae-won didn't look at it. He didn't need to. He knew who it belonged to. This wasn't an attack. It was a measurement. He remained standing until the performance ended. Until Maya bowed. Until the courtyard began to empty. Only then did he lean down slightly. "I don't miss twice," he said quietly. She smiled like she didn't understand the weight of that promise. But across the city, someone else did. Shin knew the moment the second car reported back. He didn't need the full transcript. Just the summary. Chairman present. No reaction. Direct visibility established. He dismissed his aide and remained alone in his study. The whiskey glass on his desk remained untouched. Jae-won hadn't panicked. Hadn't retaliated publicly. Hadn't confronted him again. That was the part that unsettled him. The land trust collapsed. The political withdrawals. The stalled logistics corridor. All precise. All controlled. None fatal. Shin walked to the window overlooking the Han River. He had shaped Jae-won once. Encouraged ambition. Encouraged emotional severance. But this version was different. This one wasn't trying to eliminate him. He was being preserved. That meant only one thing. Jae-won had discovered the upper clearance. Shin opened his desk drawer and removed a second phone. Unregistered. Used only when necessary. He dialed from memory. 4 rings. A voice answered. Neutral. Genderless. He found the relay chain, Shin said calmly. A pause. And? He's tightening, Shin replied. Not striking. Another pause. 3 words came back. Keep him close. The line disconnected. Shin stood in silence for several seconds. So. He wasn't the target. He was the bridge. Which meant if he fell too soon, the structure above him would lose its buffer. He allowed himself a slow breath. For the first time in years, the control he once held over the chairman had shifted. This wasn't mentorship anymore. It wasn't a rivalry. It was positioning. And positioning required survival. Shin picked up his untouched whiskey. This game was no longer about shaping an empire. It was about staying inside it. And hoping he wasn't the piece sacrificed first. Shin requested a second meeting. Not at a restaurant this time. At his residence. Private. Controlled. Familiar territory. Jae-won arrived precisely on time. No visible security. No announcement. Shin met him in the study. Fireplace lit. Curtains drawn. 2 glasses on the table. You've been busy, Shin said mildly. So have you, Jae-won replied. They didn't sit immediately. A beat passed between them. You visited the recital, Shin continued. Yes. Visibility is dangerous. Shin set his glass down, hard. The sound carried in the quiet room. Only for those hiding, Jae-won said. They sat. No tea this time. No pleasantries. You discovered the relay chain, Shin said calmly. Jae-won didn't deny it. And you discovered that I wasn't the origin. Silence confirmed it. Shin leaned back slightly. Click. A lighter flicked in his hand, flame steady, unnecessary. You're keeping me alive, he observed. Yes. Not emotional. Not hostile. Just a fact. Shin nodded once. A leash, then. A door, Jae-won corrected. The fire shifted behind them. The wood cracked softly. You think you're climbing, Shin said. But systems above us don't collapse easily. I don't need collapse, Jae-won replied evenly. I need exposure. Shin studied him carefully. You were easier to manage when you were alone. It was easier to control. A pause. You built me, Jae-won said quietly. Yes. And now? Shin held his gaze. Now I'm hoping you don't outgrow me too quickly. Footsteps passed outside the study door. Slow. Measured. Then gone. The room cooled. For the first time, Shin's composure thinned, just slightly. He wasn't shaping the chairman anymore. He was calculating survival. And Jae-won wasn't negotiating. He was deciding how long the leash remained intact. The move wasn't financial. It wasn't political. It was procedural. At 6:40 a.m., an internal compliance review was triggered inside a division that technically did not exist. 3 subsidiaries tied to a shadow logistics chain were flagged for archival reconciliation. No press release. No market reaction. Just frozen approvals. Licenses paused mid-processing. Funds stalled in transit. Across the river, a secure office with no official name felt the shift immediately. Phones rang. Access requests returned pending. One board member received a quiet inquiry about a 10-year-old procurement irregularity. Nothing fatal. Not yet. Just friction. At 7:12 a.m., Jae-won received confirmation. First layer responding. He stood at the window of the 42nd floor and watched Seoul wake beneath him. This wasn't about destroying Shin. This was about forcing movement from above. Shin called at 8:03. You've touched something larger, Shin said calmly. Yes. A pause. They don't appreciate attention. They shouldn't have edited my life. Silence stretched. You're forcing exposure, Shin observed. I'm forcing acknowledgement. On the other end, Shin exhaled slowly. You think they'll negotiate? They will, Jae-won replied evenly. They prefer invisible stability. And if they don't? Jae-won looked down at the city. Then visibility becomes expensive. He ended the call. Across the city, in an office with no public directory listed, a second unregistered phone lit up. One message sent. He's escalating. 3 words came back. Bring him in. Jae-won's desk phone rang seconds later. Unknown routing. Unlisted extension. He answered without hesitation. A neutral voice spoke. Chairman Kim. We should talk. Finally. The structure had responded. The meeting location was not disclosed. Only coordinates. An underground parking level beneath a government annex that officially handled zoning disputes. Unofficially, oversight. Jae-won arrived alone. No escort. No visible security. The elevator descended past marked floors. Then one level deeper. The hum of the cables echoed in the shaft. When the doors opened, two men stood waiting. Not guards. Observers. They led him down a quiet corridor. Fluorescent lights flickered once overhead. A camera mounted in the corner blinked red. Inside the windowless room, a single long table waited. One person sat at the far end. Mid-50s. Impeccable posture. No identifying insignia. The kind of face that existed in photographs but never in headlines. You've been proactive, the man said calmly. You've been invasive, Jae-won replied. No handshake. No courtesy. You've disrupted internal balance, the man continued. You disrupted my life. Silence pressed against the walls. A faint mechanical buzz filled the ceiling, white noise. Intentional. 7 years ago, the man said evenly, you were positioned for scale. Attachment was a risk. You falsified intelligence. We corrected the trajectory. The language was surgical. Detached. She was not at risk, Jae-won said quietly. She was leveraged. A beat. And now? Now you're visible. Jae-won leaned forward slightly. Then let's remove invisibility. The man studied him. You think exposure protects you? I think exposure forces negotiation. Another pause. You may keep the child, the man said calmly. As long as she remains unseen. The air shifted. Jae-won stood. You don't grant me permission. Behind him, the door latch clicked. Subtle. Locked. Chairman Kim, the man added, voice lower now. If you escalate again, consequences will be structural. Jae-won didn't turn. Good, he said evenly. I prefer structures. The latch released. He walked out without looking back. Upstairs, the city still moved. But now, the war had a face. He didn't go back to the office. He went to the apartment. The hallway light flickered once as he stepped inside. Maya sat cross-legged on the living room floor, building something uneven out of plastic blocks. She looked up immediately. You're late. It wasn't an accusation. Just observation. He removed his coat slowly. I had a meeting. Important? Yes. She nodded as if that made sense. He sat on the floor across from her. Not in a chair. Not above her. Across. She pushed one of the blocks toward him. Help. He studied the half-built structure. It won't stand like that, he said. Why? The base is too narrow. She frowned at it. Then widened the bottom layer. Better? She asked. Yes. She looked at him carefully. Are we narrow? She asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. What do you mean? You and me, she said. Are we small so we don't fall? The words echoed louder than they should have. He thought about the room underground. About the man who offered permission. About remaining unseen. Yes, he said finally. We were. And now? He looked at her. At the drawing, still taped to the wall. At the crooked house with two figures inside. No, he said. She nodded once, satisfied, and added another layer of blocks. Then we'll make it wider. He watched her build. Watched her steady the base with both hands. His phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. Unknown number. He ignored it. The structure in front of him grew taller. More stable. More visible. And for the first time since that underground room, he understood the risk clearly. Being seen wasn't a weakness. It was a declaration. And he was done shrinking. The school called at 10:14 a.m. Routine tone. Administrative. There's been a procedural review, the principal said carefully. A funding irregularity tied to the new computer lab. We've been instructed to suspend operations temporarily. Jae-won didn't respond immediately. Who instructed it? We weren't told. Of course. By noon, 2 more quiet disruptions appeared. The aunt's small business license flagged for compliance verification. A delayed utilities audit. Nothing criminal. Nothing dramatic. Just friction. Structural consequences. He stood at the window of his office and watched traffic crawl below. The message was clear. You want to be seen? We control the environment. His phone vibrated again. Unknown routing. He answered. You're destabilizing neutral zones, the same neutral voice said. You touched a child's school. You made her visible. Silence. This ends if you step back. Jae-won's gaze hardened. And if I don't? A pause. Systems collapse. The line disconnected. Minutes later, Taejun entered without knocking. They've begun containment measures, he said quietly. Soft pressure. Designed to appear coincidental. Escalation threshold? Jae-won asked. Moderate. But trending upward. Across the city, Maya sat in a half-empty classroom while teachers whispered in the hallway. Confusion. Not fear. Yet. Jae-won closed his eyes briefly. 7 years ago, he had chosen isolation to protect power. Now power was testing his choice. He opened his eyes. Reverse the funding suspension, he said calmly. And expand the exposure net. Taejun hesitated. That means public confrontation. Yes. Jae-won looked back out at the city. If they want structure, he said quietly. We'll give them architecture. The story broke at 6:02 a.m. Not through tabloids. Through financial press. An anonymous compliance audit revealing irregular routing channels tied to a decommissioned relay server. No accusations. Just data. Timestamps. Authorization tiers. Structural inconsistencies. By 7:30, political analysts were speculating about shadow oversight influence in private infrastructure approvals. By 8 o'clock, Shin's name was trending internally. Not criminally. Not condemned. But visible. Shin watched the morning coverage from his study. He didn't panic. But he understood immediately. Jae-won hadn't attacked. He had illuminated. At 8:14, the unregistered phone rang. You were instructed to contain him, the neutral voice said. I was, Shin replied evenly. And? He chose visibility. Silence. You failed to predict that. Shin didn't argue. At Haesong headquarters, cameras gathered in the lobby. Reporters asking controlled questions about governance transparency. Jae-won stepped to the podium without calling the press. I support review, he said calmly. If structures are sound, they withstand light. A calculated statement. Neutral enough to avoid direct accusation. Sharp enough to sustain scrutiny. The underground office felt the pressure immediately. Exposure was expensive. Containment required noise. And noise invited investigation. Jae-won returned to his office. His phone lit up. Unknown routing. He answered. You forced public inquiry, the neutral voice said. Yes. You're destabilizing protected layers. You destabilized my life. A pause. Then, bring the child into this again, the voice warned quietly, and consequences escalate. The line went dead. Across the city, Maya's classroom window reflected afternoon light. Unaware. For now. Jae-won stood at the glass of his office. This was no longer a negotiation. It was leverage versus exposure. And only one side could afford daylight. They expected him to retreat. To quiet the audit. To pull the light back. He did the opposite. At 9 a.m., Haesong Group announced a public transparency initiative. Independent oversight. Open audit cooperation. Full disclosure review. By noon, the underground office understood the problem. If they moved against him now, it would look retaliatory. If they stayed silent, exposure deepened. At 2:17 p.m., the unregistered phone rang. "This is inefficient," the neutral voice said. "Correction," Jae-won replied. "It's visible." A pause. "You've proven your leverage. And you've proven yours." Silence settled on both ends. "Withdraw pressure from the school," Jae-won said evenly. "Lift the business audit. Restore neutrality. And in return? I stop climbing." A long calculation followed. Finally. Agreed. The line disconnected. By evening, the school suspension was reversed. The ants' audit was cleared. Licenses reinstated. No announcement. Just restoration. That night, Jae-won arrived at the apartment without calling ahead. Maya sat at the kitchen table doing homework. She looked up. "You came early." "Yes." He took off his coat. Sat across from her. No rush. No distraction. She studied him carefully. "Are we still small?" she asked. He looked at the crooked drawing on the fridge. The house. The two figures inside. "No," he said. She smiled. Outside, the city moved under streetlights. The structure above him still existed. Still watching. But now, there was a new rule in place. They could threaten power. They could test control. But they would not touch what was visible. And he would never choose isolation again. He built an empire to survive. Now he has something worth losing. Tell me. Does that make him stronger? Or easier to destroy?